some twists and turns to open up the next round of the playoffs. Literally, we had a car go upside down this weekend. Hey there, race fans. It's Race Day Top 5 with me, Frank 5. Las Vegas Motor Speedway. A fun racetrack, a 1.5-mile track that provides a lot of entertainment, especially on restarts, long green flag runs, and provides a little extra drama, especially when it comes to the playoffs. And we had it all this weekend. As the round of 8 kicked off, we had one driver punch his ticket to the playoffs after he didn't make it last week, but then got added back in via a post-race incident. Let's get into all that happened yesterday in Sin City. Number 1, Logano punches his ticket. Joey Logano, folks, has locked himself into the Championship 4, winning yesterday's South Point 400 at Las Vegas, holding off Christopher Bell, Daniel Suarez, William Byron, and Alex Bowman for the victory. Can you believe this? Joey Logano, every year that's an even-numbered year, he comes in the clutch and gets himself into the Championship 4 with a chance to win another championship. It's happened to him every even-numbered year. 2014, 2016, 2018, he won the championship that year. 2020, 2022, he made the Championship 4, winning this race to get himself into the Final Four, and he won the championship that year. And he did it again yesterday, winning at Las Vegas to punch his ticket in. Now, last week, of course, Joey Logano originally did not make the round of 8 for the playoffs because of not having enough points and not the best results the first 2 races of the round of 12. He ultimately was not able to make it. But post-race, Alex Bowman, who originally made it, was disqualified because the car was too low and did not meet the height weight post-race inspection, thus disqualifying him and taking away all the points he had accumulated in that race at the Roval, and thus being stripped of his position in the round of 8, thus giving Joey Logano entry back in to still have a chance at the championship. And yesterday, he got the job done. He had a really good race car yesterday, particularly on the long runs. Wasn't able to really keep up at the beginning of the race with some of the dominant cars, particularly the Toyotas, like Christopher Bell, for example, or when he was up there at times Denny Hamlin, or even Martin Truex Jr. or Tyler Reddick before his problem. But Logano was still consistent at the beginning of the race. He was able to get stage points in stage 1, had some solid pace in stage number 2, and in the final stage, he was just kind of pacing himself, and it looked like it was probably going to be a top 5-6 day for Joey Logano, which, given the fact that he came in the lowest of the playoff drivers, but was one of the few remaining that was still having a relatively good day with no incident at all, it was going to be a good points day for him, it looked like. But when the final caution of the race came out with about 60-plus laps to go, and Ty Gibbs, when he went around on the back straightaway, everybody came down pit road for a pit stop, but they all knew that they had to make one more stop so they could make it to the end. However, Joey Logano and Paul Wolfe decided, after making their last pit stop of the day, they were going to roll the dice and try to save as much fuel as they possibly could to make it all the way. And when you know what happens when it comes to Paul Wolfe and fuel mileage, he is one of the best crew chiefs as far as encouraging his driver to save as much fuel and knowing when to push the limit as far as how he runs his race car speed-wise to make it all the way and hope that they can find themselves in victory lane. He's done it before many times when he was Brad Keselowski's crew chief. That's why they won their championship in 2012, albeit also it was really good performance by the two team. Fuel mileage also played a factor in a lot of their wins and the success that they had. And it happened yesterday with Joey Logano. He was able to go 60-plus laps without having to make one more stop versus everybody else. He made it all the way to the checkered flag with no incident whatsoever, no restarts, nothing. He was able to save as much fuel despite a hard-charging Christopher Bell in those final 5 laps. Logano was able to have enough fuel to make it all the way home and get the win and do a burnout, which is pretty incredible. But, of course, a lot of people are pretty upset about Joey Logano even making the Championship 4, saying, like, oh, last week what happened post-race? They're rigging it so Joey Logano can make it to the Final Four once again in even number year. No. What happened last week, again, the 48 car, they had that incident on the race where they probably broke something off the car, and what led to them not being able to meet the weight height at the very end and thus be disqualified and not make it to the round of 8 and thus promoting Joey Logano back in. And Logano, the 22, did everything right yesterday, saving enough fuel to be able to go to the end of the race. And quite frankly, despite the struggles that they've had earlier this year, lately, Logano was turned it around. Of course, opened up the playoffs with the win at Atlanta And that, of course, got him into the round of 12, and he did everything he needed to do at Charlotte Roval last week to get all those points. And, of course, thanks to the disqualification of the 48, got him in. And yesterday, he did everything right, running a smart race and saving enough fuel at the very end so he could make it all the way and got into victory lane, and now he's in the championship 4. So, could we see Joey Logano hoist the Belle France Cup for the 3rd time in his career in a few weeks at Phoenix? We'll wait and see. We just need to see who his competition is going to be. But a big congrats to Joey Logano and the 22 team, and a big shout out to Paul Wolfe. Man, that guy is a master when it comes to fuel mileage, and that propels his drivers to win races. Number 2, Bell dominates, but comes up short. Christopher Bell had the best car yesterday. Started on the pole, led the most laps, over 150 plus laps led, and won stage number 2. It looked like it was his race to lose. And they did nothing wrong yesterday. They had a good car and did everything right. Good pit stops, good speed. They had everything fall their way. It was just the last part of the race where the fuel mileage of the 22 benefited him versus a hard-charging Christopher Bell. Of course, I mentioned Bell was one of the multiple cars that had to pit with about 30 plus laps to go in the race because they knew that they couldn't make it all the way. So he came in, got the fuel, got his tires, came back on the track, and he was flying through the field, passing guys that were on worn tires or were trying to save enough fuel so they could make it all the way without having to make another pit stop pending a yellow. Well, we did not have a yellow, and Bell was closing every single lap, trying to get to the front and get to the 22 of Joey Logano. He was able to get by Daniel Suarez, who was running second at the time, was the leader until the 22 passed him. Bell got by Suarez at the white flag lap, and despite a hard charge, Bell could not generate enough momentum to get to the 22 car. Plus, Joey Logano had his teammate, albeit wounded out there, Ryan Blaney, defending him at the very end of the race as kind of the safety block in case the 20 got anywhere close to the 22 and prevented him from getting to victory lane. But, you know, the 20 team's got to feel pretty happy about the result, even though they would have loved to be the ones in victory lane because they were the team yesterday to win that race. Unfortunately, things just don't go your way. The other end is able to get the victory lane, and you, on the other hand, end up with a runner-up finish, but solid stage points because they gained a lot of them yesterday with the points they accumulated in stage 1 and the stage 2 victory. It helps build them a little bit of a cushion heading into these next 2 races, and he's pretty good at these next 2 events, I must say. But a great performance by the 20 team nonetheless yesterday, although Bell was very frustrated in his post-race interview saying, you know, I can't believe it, and he just had a hard time processing coming up that short to the 22 car, thinking we were going to be able to make it all the way. Felt like we should be the ones in victory lane, and just got beat by, you know, the 22 team being able to save enough fuel. But again, looking at the positives, they brought speed to this race this weekend. They had a fast race car. They were able to lead the most laps. They won a stage. They got a lot of stage points and come away with a top 2 finish, giving them a little bit of a buffer for these next 2 races. But they would certainly love to have won yesterday and not have to worry about how the next 2 races are going to go for them regarding if anything were to happen that took them out of the event and somebody else were to be able to take their spot. But regardless, a great run by Christopher Bell and the 20 team. Number 3, Larson goes through a lot of struggles yesterday. Man, Kyle Larson had a rough go at it yesterday in Las Vegas. I mean, of course, a track like this, and of course, he won the spring race here early this year, you would think that Kyle Larson would be up front contending for the win yesterday. Well, that was never really the case, actually. They had a good race car, but they were nowhere near the strength that was the 20-car Christopher Bell or some of the Toyotas that had the drive position and speed at the beginning of the race. Larson was just hovering around 5th to 7th place, which, you know, is good for him as far as needing those stage points. But when we had a late race yellow towards the end of stage number 1, Kyle Larson actually ran over a piece of debris that fell up from the 3-car of Austin Dillon when he got wrecked on the turn 3 by Daniel Hemrick. And Larson had to run the rest of that stage with a little bit of damage on his car, even though he was able to get a stage point out of it, finishing in 10th. They had to bring the car down pit road, tape up that area so they could be able to carry on and move on the rest of the race without having any damage that affect them aerodynamically. Well, stage 2 did not really get any better for the 5-car because Larson had a pit stop during the middle of the stage where everybody was making green flag stops. The 5-car actually had a problem and weren't able to get one of the lugs tied on their left side of the car, I believe, and thus Larson had to come back down pit road another time so they could try to tighten up that lug. He was able to get back out there, but he was already 2 laps down at the time. And then he was able to get by the leaders because he had a little more pace and a little fresher tires for one thing, and was able to get back to just 1 lap down. So to start off the final stage, he was in a dogfight with some of the other cars that were lapped down. Mainly Ty Gibbs was his competition, until once he got by the 54 spun a couple laps later, thus bringing out the caution and getting Kyle Larson back on the lead lap. And he was charging through the field as fast as he could, knowing he needed to get every spot possible just because of the cushion he came in with, all the stage wins and all the race wins he's accumulated this year. He came in with a 33-point buffer. Well, unfortunately, some of those guys were able to make it all the way without having to pit late, like, of course, Joey Logano winning the race, Suarez with the top 3, John Hunter Nemechek with the top 10, and even Denny Hamlin as well. He was able to finish 8th place. Larson ended up finishing 11th yesterday, which, given what they went through, is not totally terrible. But at the same time, what if they didn't have that mistake in the middle of their green flag pit stop in stage number 2? Could have been a little bit better outcome for them. I mean, they would have been able to accumulate a couple stage points, maybe a little deeper in the top 10, but still, you would have gotten a few more stage points than what you had from stage number 1. Just a missed opportunity and a mistake by the 5 team, and which pretty much led to them, not being able to get as many points as they hoped for, and led to them being laps down. Then they got them all back and were able to get back to an 11th place result. But thankfully, the next 2 races suit Kyle Larson's racing style. Of course, Homestead Miami Speedway's been really good to him, and he's always been strong at Martinsville. So he should be okay as long as he doesn't have a massive incident. And all I can say is to Kyle Larson, next week at Homestead, please don't do what you did last year, which was come in too hot to pit road and hit the water barrels, because that's not fun. But despite all that, Larson was able to salvage a decent result. Number 4, chaos at the beginning of Stage 2, taking out 3 playoff drivers. Yes, a lot of our stars that are in the playoffs had a big incident happen on the front stretch yesterday on lap number 90, and that included Tyler Reddick, our regular season champion, Chase Elliott, the most popular driver, and our defending Cup Series champion, Ryan Blaney. So what happened was, coming off of turn number 4 in what was a battle for 5th place, Chase Elliott, who was on a different tire strategy compared to a few other guys to start Stage 2, was running on the outside of Martin Truex Jr., coming through turn number 4. And then right behind him on the outside, Tyler Reddick got a massive run in the outside lane where he's pretty comfortable running at it, particularly at this racetrack or any of these racetracks that are multi-groove, mile-and-a-half tracks where you can pretty much run it everywhere you go. Reddick got a big run through turns 3 and 4, and while that was happening, Martin Truex Jr. started pushing up the track, got into the 9, and unfortunately the 45 of Reddick was right up there and knocked both of them around. Chase Elliott went for a spin and collected the 6 car, Brad Keselowski. Ryan Blaney ran over some debris and damaged the rear toe link of his car. And then Tyler Reddick hit the grass and then barrel rolled 1, 2, 3 times before landing back on all 4 wheels. I mean, I've never seen a stock car suffer a blowover, a flip, at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. I mean, we've seen blowovers here at Las Vegas before, but that was in different form of motorsports. And of course, there was one very significant here 13 years ago, but I don't want to talk too much about it because it's, still too depressing. And I think a lot of you know which one I'm talking about. But despite that barrel roll, Reddick was able to land back on all 4s, but because of the damage to the body of his car on the roof, the front of the car, and the toe link, Reddick was done for the day. As for the 12 of Ryan Blaney, who of course started at the rear of the field because of a backup car after he wrecked it on the opening lap of practice on Saturday and having to start dead last, and he kept fighting his way through the field, he ran over the debris, damaged the toe link, and went around for a spin, and thus he had to go down pit road and work multiple laps on that car so they could try to get it back to at least run up there and finish the race at minimum speed, which they were able to, but multiple laps down. As for Chase Elliott, he was able to run minimum speed, but there was still some damage to the car, so once they got to minimum speed, they took the 9 back to the garage where they could at least work on it. He got back out there, but wasn't able to pick up any position, so with 11 laps to go, he called it a day and retired the car. But a big hole for these 3 drivers, and let me tell you something, Tyler Reddick, this playoffs have not really gone his way, and if you look at the last 2 years in this next-gen era, the driver that wins the regular season championship normally does not have a good playoffs. I mean, Chase Elliott, he made the championship 4 in 2022 because of all the wins he accumulated, but he had a rough go in those playoffs, only finishing in the top 10 4 out of the 10 races, and one of those was a win at Talladega, which got him into the round of 8. other than that, he was really struggling in those playoffs. And then last year, Martin Truex Jr., you talk about a collapse from regular season champion to literally just barely getting into the round of 8 and thus not advancing because of a poor performance at Vegas, an engine failure at Homestead, and not having the car at Martinsville. It was a rough go for Martin Truex Jr. last year. And now Tyler Reddick. He has not really shined in these playoffs, folks. I mean, he started out well with a top 10 Atlanta. They struggled at Watkins Glen. They didn't perform well at Bristol. They were pretty decent, but weren't really the best in the opening race of the round of 12 at Kansas. They were pretty rough. And then they got caught in that big wreck at Talladega. And then they had an incident during last week's Roval where he made contact with guys trying to fight his way through the field, damaged the toe length. They worked on it, got him back out there, and he was able to muster an 11th place result, which was enough to get him into the next round of the playoffs. And then yesterday, the barrel roll, he started off the race winning stage number 1, which kind of would have helped him if he didn't have that blowover, but unfortunately, that barrel roll really hurt him and his odds as far as trying to point his way in. And looking at the replay, Reddick said, I could have played a little bit safer. I probably should have made a run on the outside there. So he kind of took responsibility for being a part of that incident and just getting himself collected and also hurting the other 2 playoff drivers in Elliott and Blaney. But those 3 are pretty much in a must-win situation in these next 2 races. Now, I can see Tyler Reddick winning at Homestead because his racing style, he could definitely win there. But at Martinsville, I don't really think Reddick has a chance. He's okay, but not great there. But Elliott and Blaney, they both have good chances to win at Martinsville. Of course, Elliott did it 4 years ago, and that got him to the championship 4. We won his championship. And Ryan Blaney did it last year. So there's still hope for these 3 drivers. Obviously, it's only maybe 1 or 2 of them could get in. But they're going to have to bring their A game and get to victory lane in one of these next 2 races in order to be in the championship 4. But those 3 drivers, yeah, they got a big hole to climb out of after what happened yesterday. And number 5, the racing at Las Vegas. Always solid with this next-gen car. The restarts are so much fun. They're 3, 4 wide, looking for multiple grooves, changing lanes one by one, and even the long runs when we have battles going on for whether it's 5th, 6th, or even 10th, 12th, or even for the free pass. It's a lot of fun. And, of course, the long green flag run at the end of the race where guys were pitting versus some guys staying out to save enough fuel to make it to the end, hopefully, was very, very entertaining. Had me on the edge of my seat. I was wondering, was Joey Logano going to have enough fuel to make it to the end? Was Christopher Bell going to come for at least 13 seconds back with those fresh tires and fuel and get to victory lane? I mean, it was absolutely incredible yesterday to see the outcome of the race and figure out what it would come down to, whether it be fuel mileage that got you the victory or fresh tires and a fast race car. And at the end of the day, it was fuel mileage that got the win for the 22, but really good racing once again at Las Vegas. Also, I want to give a quick shout out to Mr. Doug Rice of the Performance Racing Network, who called his final race this weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. 36 amazing years of calling races on radio, and especially for PRN, being one of the founders of that network, and they have contributed to multiple races with fantastic finishes. For, of course, the headquarters are at Charlotte Motor Speedway. They contributed to fun races, particularly at Atlanta Motor Speedway, Bristol Motor Speedway, of course, the night where Dale Earnhardt rattled Terry Labine's cage and bumped him on the last lap at Bristol in that race in 1999. Memories. And Doug, we want to thank you for all that you've done for motorsports and NASCAR and PRN over the past 30 plus years. You have meant a lot to us, and I've enjoyed listening to your voice over the radio since I became a NASCAR fan. And it won't be the same without you next year, my friend, but we thank you for everything you've done, and enjoy retirement, and we'll hopefully still see you around the garage area, even though you're not a broadcaster anymore. We thank you for everything, and thanks for 36 amazing years, Doug. Now, the round of 8 continues on the next weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. Another fun racetrack, mile-and-a-half multi-groove track. You'll run anywhere. Tires will certainly be a factor, especially when it comes to long runs, whether you are able to save some tires at the beginning of a run versus how you're managing those tires towards the middle of a run, especially if we have any long green flag runs, which I guarantee you we will. Next week should certainly benefit some of those drivers that have dirt racing experience on a track that's worn out and multi-groove. Which one of those drivers could punch their ticket next week to the championship 4 with a win? Could it be Kyle Larson or Tyler Reddick? Or will Christopher Bell get revenge for not getting yesterday's win and getting into the championship 4 with a win next week? Or Joey Logano play spoiler yet again? He did it before in the round of 12 in 2015, winning all 3 races. Why can't he do it this time? Going to be an interesting day next weekend in hopes of Miami to see who comes out on top and possibly punch their ticket to Phoenix. So I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Subscribe, like, and congrats once again to Joey Logano and the 22 team on their impressive win yesterday at Las Vegas. Have a great week, everybody. Let's go racing!